So, good morning. We're ready for our second plenary session. I am Christopher Morphew of the United States, Johns Hopkins University, and I am the moderator for this session. My understanding is we will, in this hour-long session, we will have approximately 40 minutes for the presentation and then 20 minutes for questions. I will introduce our speaker and moderate questions that follow the presentation. So, our first speaker is Attila Pausitts. Professor Pausitts is currently chairperson of the European Association for Institutional Research and director of the Center for Educational Management and Higher Education Development at Danube University. He's also academic director of the Erasmus Mundus Master Programme, Research and Innovation in Higher Education. And he's going to be speaking with us, as I said, for approximately 40 minutes this morning, and then we'll have 20 minutes for questions.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chris. Здравствуйте, дорогие коллеги. I'm very sorry, but my Russian is very limited, even though I spent a couple of years to learn the language, but did not practice. Therefore, I have to jump into an English presentation. I will try to keep to 40 minutes, but just stop me if I am talking too long. Yeah, right. Okay. So the answer to the title of this conference, at least in my presentation, so how to get in touch, or how to move, or how to link a dynamic university to a dynamic world is just use third mission. Very simple. I attended a conference a couple of weeks ago, and I learned that in a very moment when a rector started to speak, the university switched off the Wi-Fi. Don't worry, I didn't ask for this favor this time, but what I also learned in this particular presentation, that make your point at the beginning, doesn't matter what you are telling after that. So what I try to do is bring in hopefully a strong statement at the very beginning of this presentation. I also learned last today that Russian likes or like strong comments and statements. So I try to be as strong as possible when it comes to third mission. So maybe one side note that I'm really honored to be here, not only to meet you, but also as a spokesman of the Austrian National Higher Education Researchers Network. We have our annual conference just in a couple of weeks' time in Vienna. This is for me also a kind of a benchmark exercise to get in touch with researchers in this country. So here is it. This is the statement. We already heard about diversification in the previous discussion and the importance to find a proper strategy. My point here is that when it comes to future strategies, most probably the third mission is the playground to move. I am not talking about at this very moment what third mission means, but at least please keep this as a message, at least from this presentation, that when it comes to future strategies, when it comes to diversification, when it comes to positioning, third mission is going to play a more important role in the future as it is today. I used to work in the last decade or so in different projects, research and development initiatives related to third mission at the EU level, in Saudi Arabia and Serbia, in Austria. And I also would like to bring in some insights from these initiatives. So the outline is like this. I would like to spend very little time on the first and second missions. Just to underline my first statement, these are not that important to spend more time on research and education. So I try to focus then on third mission, try to develop an understanding for this. And also maybe another mission, or the fourth mission, or my first mission today in this presentation is maybe also to invite you to do more research in the field of third mission, third stream, services, engagement, as we call them. A couple of years ago, we started a project in Austria, and I think this is one of the first initiatives where we looked at a system level to understand third mission by analyzing performance agreements, institutional development plans, and annual reports from 22 universities. And I try to bring in some key findings and results from our project here. And at the very end, I try to draw some conclusions. At the very end of this presentation, there are also some recommendations. Most probably, we do not really have time to catch those recommendations. But there is a so-called green paper coming from one of our EU projects, which I think brings also very good conclusions and also some recommendations how to move on with third mission in the future. My rector always loves if I talk about my university. And this is my university, by the way, 22 years old. Pretty much the same discussions 30 years ago, which strategy, where to go, how to find our position. So this particular university, the Danube University, I would call it the third stream or third mission university, offers only continuing education. The average age of our students is 40, and we have 80% third-party funding. So you would call this university most probably an entrepreneurial university. I like to use this picture just to explain the notion of a university. Most probably, if you look, all right, it's a very nice pointer because I can't point anything on that. All right, just to come back, okay. Anyhow, so if you look to the right-hand side, this is the old building. This is the university, right? Built for hundreds of years, most probably will stay in the same. Strong walls. On the left-hand side, there is something new. It could be third mission. It could be something that is just attached to the university. Some others would call this as a modern university where we kind of combine tradition and the modern type of a higher education institution. And in the surrounding, you see on the right-hand side, on the bottom, we have a kindergarten. This is not a spa on the right-hand side, don't worry. This is an art installation. So we pay also attention not only to education and research, but also to art. We have a kind of a company in the middle. By the way, we share this campus with 4 other higher education institutions. This is also quite unique. And there is a bridge or 2 bridges between the 2 buildings. Most probably you can't see this over there. And this is the most interesting place because this is a kind of a bridging function. So you know, from one place to another, from one mission, teaching and learning, to another mission, to research. We very often use this also to explain higher education management, which is also kind of a function to improve or make our universities more effective and efficient. So just keep this picture about the tradition and maybe the new stage or the new future of higher education institutions. All right. So these are all those words which we all know, right? So you name them, you know, talking about lifelong learning, leaving the ivory tower, e-learning, MOOCs, the changing mode, the classification issues. So there are a lot of areas and discussions. In the very same time, we have also a new rhetoric coming into higher education towards the new public management initiatives, talking about knowledge alliances where universities should work together with companies, employability as the key mission, so to say, then science to professional, science communication, accountability, towards, of course, new public management, entrepreneurship, effectiveness, efficiency, third mission. So kind of a new rhetoric towards the development and dynamics of higher education. At the very same time, and your country is, I think, also a good example for that, we have excellent initiatives. And if you look to the list, very often when we're talking about excellence, that we always look at the institutions or centers, right? So this is where the money goes, so to say, to the institutions and centers. However, if we look to some recent initiatives, there is also some tension to look at the system level, to also try to identify higher education system excellence, which is not that easy. But there are some initiatives like the innovation, the Global Innovation Index, the EEU initiative, which is empower European universities. I had a chance to work with this within this framework. The basic idea was to look on higher education policies and the system performance and try to match them or look at those policies and the system performance. So how policy supports the system. And then the Universities 21 initiative, which is a ranking. Just to give you some notions related to this, most probably you can't really read the slide. The good news is that when it comes to innovation, we every time also refer to higher education, which is, I think, a good news for us because we are in the game. So if we look to the human capital and research part of the concept, of the conceptual framework of how they develop a ranking or innovation index, they use education, tertiary education, as an input factor. If you look to the output side, we also see knowledge creation, knowledge impact, and also diffusion, where maybe third mission would come in. There is another, so based on this framework, there's a ranking. I'm very sorry for this very poor slide, but the reason for this, that I want to also bring in Russia into this picture, and therefore we got a quite long list. Okay, so there's the very bottom of the list. There's Russia around Greece, Turkey, Chile, and Vietnam. Most probably your Minister of Higher Education does not really love this slide. So this is coming from the Global Innovation Index 2017 ranking. In fact, all these figures are not that important than just the position where your countries or our countries are. Another ranking, the system level, is the Universitas 21 ranking also from 2017. You see Austria is number 11 and Russia is 32. And if you look to the changes from 2016 to 2017, there are not so many changes. So the system remains, so to say, the same, at least in the short term, which is, I think, understandable. Besides the system excellence and the institutional or center excellence, we have also program and individual level discussion and initiatives of excellence, like the Erasmus Mundus Program initiative. Maybe you know this. I'm also coordinator of one of those programs called Research and Innovation in Higher Education. I'm really happy that 1/3 of our graduates move into a research career, continuing with a PhD. And of course, with also at individual levels, we have this publish or perish. I've noticed this publication also from the center here. So there's a lot of evaluation going on. So at the end, we come up with some concepts of higher education institutions, where they should look like. One of those is the world-class university, developed by a large network of Chinese, American, European research universities. So we have, so to say, the characteristics of a research university already in place. Since Burton Clark work back in the 80s, we have also a concept for an entrepreneurial university. The funny thing here is that we use this concept these days by our politicians as something new. In fact, this is more than 20 years old or 30 years old concept. Then we have others like the responsible university, telling us that we have to open up, so we have to leave the ivory tower. This is maybe also another concept where third mission come in. We have this global, local perspective that we play a global game, but we have to become also responsible for the region, for the local environment where our universities are located. And then also the lifelong university, which is a notion where a university should be not only a partner for a certain time of between 18 and 25 or 30, but in the lifespan even longer. So how to bring it down to earth, these concepts? One is that we that with all these concepts, we come up with a high complexity. So this is not only research and teaching anymore, it's much more, just to think about continuing education or lifelong learning, or just to think about a third-party funding. So there is a increasing complexity for our higher education institutions to move on. Some of the scholars came up then with the idea that besides this, the first and second mission, maybe we need a third one to deal with this complexity and give some kind of or try to give a conceptual framework to those activities which are not covered by the first and second mission, but still are at higher education institutions in place. And then there is also the idea that universities have also a social role, so the kind of a social responsibility. I remember, I think it was 2004 when the first European higher education institutions, and it was the University of Applied Sciences, Turku in Finland, came up with the first social responsibility report of a university in Europe. Today we have much more universities providing this kind of reports also about the activities which are in place, and they do. And at the very end, Mike Shattuck, maybe you know his work, stated, I think, clearly that the importance of universities is based on their achievements in research and teaching, and not on their willingness to institutional change. So if you remember my first picture about my university, so this goes in line with the right-hand side building, strong, therefore not really simple to move. And we know that besides the church and the military, higher education institutions are the oldest organizations. So very often what I see, or I call it the management by waiting. So we just wait until the new wave and just sit down and have a coffee. And next time there will be something different again in place. So this is why I'm saying this, because very often when I talk to rectors and presidents of universities, and it comes to third mission, they always respond to this: oh, this is just a wave. And a couple of years' time, that's over. So just sit down and wait, and something will happen in the meantime. So just coming to my statement talking about diversification, I think that there's a huge debate and movement when it comes to positioning of higher education in different levels. So talking about program, units, institutions, and system. However, if you remember, the triangle refers to Burton Clark work on the market in the top, in the right hand, the oligarchy, the academic oligarchy, and the left hand side, the state. by trying to explain a system, a higher education system, and try to position higher education institutions within this triangle. In my understanding, this triangle, very often if you look in the literature, it's pretty much so that the corners, they have similar distances, right? In my understanding, if you look at higher education systems, those corners are not that, so they have different distances. So very often the state and the academic oligarchy is much closer to each other than the market. So that would be the last triangle, so to say. So the point here is what I would like to make is that differentiation and diversification also is contextual to the system. So we can't move our institution without taking into consideration this triangle, so where our institutions are embedded. Of course, we have also some other developments and movements like the diversification of individuals within our higher education institutions. We Church 2006 talking about the third space worker. We see also a professional approach towards higher education management, where we have more and more professional leaders and managers inside the universities. And last but not least, when it comes to student population, we have also a very diverse population, more and more, adult learners, minorities, and so on. So what is the solution? If I look to the Yerevan communique, this is clearly stated that there's a responsibility, so to say, to balance the social contract, whatever social contract means, between higher education institutions and their respective societies. And there are 4 bullet points where the Yerevan communique refers to quality and relevance of learning and teaching, employability, inclusion, and implementing structural reforms. There is nothing so much about lifelong learning, for example, nothing so much about third mission. So, but there is a notion, or at least a direction, talking about the social contract of higher education institutions. Just coming back to my first statement, the social contract, I do believe this, and I will show you some figures just in a second, that the social contract is changing, and we are not able to cover this with the first and second mission. We need also a third mission to this, to balance, so to say, this contract between the society and higher education institutions. So at the end, based on this, coming from the first and second mission, there is a leading question. So how does the university achieve some impact within society from its research and teaching? So I think this question indicates also that when it comes to third mission, this is not the third lag or the third silo within higher education, but relies on research and teaching, so the core missions and activities on universities. All right, so third mission. Most probably, you have a kind of a picture about third mission, or maybe your own definition for the third mission. Unfortunately, we do not really have time at this very moment, but maybe in the Q&A session, to come back to the definition of third mission, how you understand third mission as a concept. So there are some commentators, while responding to this, were saying that this is a vehicle to leave the ivory tower, or the third mission, in fact, there is not only a lifelong learning or technology transfer innovation where we associate always third mission, but there is also a social dimension. So third mission, so to say, is as a mission to bring money into higher educational institutions, but there is also a social responsibility connected to this. And there is a definition. It could bring in some more. By the way, there is a special issue in the European Journal of Higher Education back in 2015 discussing third mission, and I would recommend maybe to look at on this special issue when you are interested in the different definitions about third mission. So while this is from the UK, activities, so to say, generation, use, application, and exploitation of knowledge. And here the point made by the very end, outside academic environments. This is the definition comes from the Russell report. Russell Group is a network of research-intensive universities in the UK, and they come up with the concept of third mission, talking about activities and capabilities which can be used, so to say, to develop third stream activities, which are teaching and research, as I mentioned before, and then communication. So this is also mentioned in one of the slides before. There's science to public, science to professional, which is getting more and more important, the communication part, so to get engaged with the society towards proper communication channels and activities. There is another work coming from the Prime Network, which was a European initiative, also I think about 25 universities back in 2006, when they tried to develop also or conceptualize a third mission, identifying 8 different dimensions, rather economic or societal dimensions, like human resources, intellectual property, spin-offs, contract with industry, and from the economic perspective, or then participation in policy making, public understanding and science, and so on. And there's another project, the so-called E3M, EU initiative. I still remember one of those days when we started with this project, sitting in a room like this with colleagues from Cambridge, Oborg, Valencia, and other universities, try to come up with a common definition for this third mission. After 1.5 days, we gave up, because we said the common definition for those universities coming from different higher education systems would be so general that there is no sense, in fact, to develop a definition for that. So what we did, we said, okay, what are those activities which could be associated or affiliated to third mission? And we came up with those 3 dimensions: continuing education, technology transfer, and social engagement. And we try to build up around these dimensions different activities, and related to these different activities also descriptors and indicators to try to get an understanding for the third mission. The good news here is just looking to those 3 projects, that we have already a substantial number of indicators which we can use to describe the third mission. So, and even we have a certain number of recommendations how to move forward with third mission in a national or in an international context. I just say, just a very, very short, I'm not really favoring on rankings. However, if we look to those rankings in place, 10 minutes, good. Then we see that when it comes to third mission and the use of indicators in this dimension, there is very little addressed and dedicated to third mission, which is, on one hand side, for those that are against rankings, is a good news. Those that are in favor of rankings, this is okay, that this is something that we should change, and we should bring in some indicators in those rankings initiatives as well. Fortunately, coming from the E3M project, we were able also to address this in the U multi-rank. So U multi-rank addresses third mission, at least partly, in this, I would rather say it is a benchmarking initiative and not a ranking initiative. However, U multi-rank respond to this, I think, in a better way. Okay, so some conclusions here, talking about the third mission. We pretty much focus these days on excellence in third and second mission. I think there is a next stage where we look also in excellence in third mission. Because third mission became somehow the vehicle of change, and also to help to redefine the social contract between society and higher education institutions. At this very moment, rankings are not really referring to third mission. However, we have a large set of indicators which we can use at least to to benchmark, or for us as higher education researchers also maybe to use for our research in the future. Of course, there are some challenges when it comes to data collection, availability, feasibility, and comparability of these data. However, I think this is also something, kind of a next step for the future to improve this as well. So a few remarks from Austria. It's not really obvious that a keynote presentation starts with research questions at the very end of the presentation. But as I said, I was kind of obliged to address the statement first and then bring the research question at the very end. So, however, these are those questions where we try to find answers in the Austrian context. So how is third mission covered towards the governing instruments, performance agreements, institutional development plans, and annual reports? What are, so to say, how there are also some guidelines, especially when it comes to performance agreements, how those guidelines refers to third mission, what kind of indicators are already in place to measure third mission in Austria, and how those different types of education institutions respond to third mission, for example, in performance agreements. As you know, Austria introduced 2002 a new Higher Education Act, giving much more autonomy to universities, and so kind of there's a shift from government to governance. Introduced also 3 different instruments. I mentioned the development plans, these days for 6 years, then the performance agreements for 3 years. So within one development plans, we have 2 performance agreements, and then there is an annual knowledge survey. The good news for us, for higher education researchers, that those data about higher education in Austria is also publicly available on the website. So if you are interested on those figures, just visit the Unidata website. I know this is a rather long link, but most probably our presentation will be shared later on, and then you can look at it in this website as well. Okay, so what we did, we look on those, so we used the E3M approach around those 3 dimensions. We developed a research design for those 22 universities. We looked on those documents of the 22 universities, development plans, performance agreements, and surveys. And we use text mining, first and foremost, to look on those concepts and wording which are in place or used by the universities. We looked on the wording, on the synonym, the frequency, where they are located, the different places within those chapters. And at the end, we have to read all of them, because the quantitative analysis is a nice starting point, but between the lines to read really or to understand those documents, we have to read it. It was most probably one of my hardest summer to read all these documents because of the language, because of the copy-paste exercise from one instrument to another. So, on the other hand, I am most probably the only one in Austria who read all of this. I noticed also there is a huge difference between the different documents coming from different universities as well. Okay, some figures. So what we did first, we just counted those wordings or concepts within those instruments like interest, innovation, knowledge transfer, startup, industry, technology transfer. So it was the first part. The second was we looked at those the places, and this chart is from the performance agreement, where you see on the top the different chapters and the left-hand side the wording. I just would like to highlight two things. One is that it seems that, and this goes not only for a technology transfer innovation, but also for the social dimensions, as well as the lifelong learning part, that when it comes to third mission, there is no quality assurance in place. So at least universities do not refer to this. So this is the reason why A1 is almost entirely empty. So quality assurance and third mission is still a very weak link, so to say, between the two. The second, when it comes to technology transfer, it was also very interesting that we did not really see any three cooperation and technology transfer. So it seems that universities try to implement technology transfer without companies, which is also a bit strange. But there is a reason for that, because the understanding of universities when it comes to the performance agreement is that the university has to respond to the ministry how the public money had to be spent. And for them it's more important to highlight the academic cooperations and networks, how the university is embedded in academia, than how university is embedded in a broader context. So most probably this is one of the explanations why this spot is empty. What we could also do with this exercise, we could do a kind of a benchmarking to look on those universities and they profile. So what kind of wordings did they use to highlight or explain their strategies or their performances? And there are, of course, some wording which are more popular, and there are some other words which are not that popular. Like, if you look at the very bottom of this list, art cooperation, interestingly, art universities did not really respond to this part. So they did not use art cooperations in their performance agreements at all. All right. What we also did, we looked also how close those concepts are to each other within the documents. Just taking this example of continuing education, coming from the institutional development plan. So it seems that the famous part is talking about master courses and postgraduate programs. So this is how universities want to move forward. When it comes to the performance agreement document, we see a different picture. So universities addresses the lifelong learning strategy, for example, much more often than in their own institutional development plans. And one of the reasons for that, because the ministry asked them to develop the lifelong learning strategy. And so in the performance agreement, this goes to the university, to the ministry, they have to respond to this. But when it comes, again, to their own institutional development plan, lifelong learning strategy didn't play a key role at all. All right, so just a few results coming from our project. First is there is no common concept for third mission. I'm not saying that this is a very bad news for Austria. I think this is very typical that they because of the notion of third mission, any university has a different understanding in place, and also a different wording which they use. We had a workshop with all those 22 universities, and it was very interesting to see that very often they use different words to explain something. Most probably this is also has something to do with a strategy, and maybe also because of this. The third mission is a very, very early stage in terms of systematic understanding at the institutional level. The performance agreement didn't really lead to a third mission framework at all. We also looked at the cross-cutting topics, so between the three dimensions, technology transfer, innovation, lifelong learning, and the social dimension. And there were very little connections between those the three dimensions. I also showed this related to lifelong learning strategy that we came up with different results for different document types. So there's very little coherence on third mission looking to those three resources. The missing quality assurance and management concepts for third mission. And at the end, in terms of importance structure and presentation, third mission, I didn't play a key role at all. Of course, there are some limits of this research, quantitative versus quantitative analysis, the meaning of the language also, what does it mean, a science to professional, also the missing concept, which I see not in fact is a limitation, but this is not a presentation to call for a common concept of third mission. I think the strategy or the way forward should be that every and each university look at in their own third mission and try to define a proper strategy, maybe using those three dimensions, and not try to tackle all these different activities and services which could be affiliated or related to third mission. So it's rather a strong point here for a proper third mission strategy instead of trying to cover everything in a very same time. And last but not least, those, as we all know, those documents, there is an institutional reality and there is a language of negotiation, especially when it comes to performance agreements between a university and the ministry. Okay, so these are the recommendations coming from this green paper. I just jump into to the first statement, again saying that diversification will take place much more towards third mission in the future than in the past. I think there is much more space also for universities to move into this direction because research and education is rather overcrowded in terms of competition, and this is not that easy to maneuver or find a proper positioning for their own university in the future. So to move the tanker is going to be rather difficult. It seems the third mission might be here a good vehicle, especially for those young universities coming into the field to take, like my university, to take a very special mission like offering continuing education. So, spasibo большое. I noticed that I took a couple of more minutes than expected. I hope that at least I was able to stimulate you to do more research in the field of third mission, and looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have approximately 15 minutes left for questions. If you would like to ask a question, do we have I guess everyone has a microphone, so, and those in the back, if you'd like to ask a question, maybe get closer to a microphone so you could ask said question. Anyone want to get us started? Yes, Maria.
Thank you very much for a very interesting and provocative presentation. I would also start with a provocative question, probably. Why do you think individual academics should be welcoming this third mission? Why they should consider that not a burden, but something which expands their possibilities, etc.?
So first of all, I think this is not something new. There's already in place. So academics did in the past also third mission activities. Maybe we did not call them third mission, but they were engaged in different societal activities, voluntary work as well, also in continuing education activities, and so on. So I think there is something already inside the system. if I look now to the measures which also at the system level and also in the rankings and evaluation, very often, for example, those exercises look also, for example, to publications with industry. So joint publications. So there are also a kind of, I would say, attention to not only to boost and push only third mission activities forward, but there are also already activities in place and others which are not that far, so to say, from our academic work at all. On the other hand, very often those academics, when a university developed a third mission strategy, I said, okay, do we get more money? First reaction. Do we have more resources to do this? And if not, why should we do this? And I think this is not a chicken-egg issue. I think that this is a bottom-up, top-down relationship. We need both. So it's not enough if the rectorate say, okay, now we move into third mission and we have a strategy, and you, dear professor, you have to do this, and you have to run an evening seminar for your local community on health issues for free. I think this is, it's about incentives, for sure. On the other hand, very often it's just to detect those activities which are already in place and give the academics the floor to demonstrate that there is, that they did something. And I think that this is rather an evolutionary and not a revolutionary approach which we should follow here.
Thank you. Another question? Yes, in the back.
Dmitry Kochetkov, Euro Federal University. Thank you again for your very interesting and up-to-date presentation. I assure you that we are thinking now about the same things, and this is really motivating that other people also think about the same issues. And I have an opinion question, because I know theoretical concepts, but I'm very interested in your opinion about the third mission. Well, I'm a little bit confused with all these missions, and I'd like to know in the end, what is university, research, teaching, or social institution, in your opinion, of course? Thank you.
If you just remember the Russell Group presentation of a third mission, I think it's clearly showed that third mission is built up on the first and second mission. So I don't, and this is also my view on that. This is not a third pillar. It's just a set of services coming from the first and second mission, which can be used also to get more engaged with the society at large. So this is rather to make those activities visible, to combine them. And just to give you an example, some universities, mainly in the Nordic countries, they have installed a vice rector for third mission or regional development, just to give a structure, to give a responsibility also to this particular activity or responsibility of a university. If you ask the academics or a university, they would never say that we are a regional developer. Our vis-a-vis, our community is an international academic community. This is where our heart is. It's not the university, it's not the region. However, if you look to the impact of those institutions in terms of employability, in terms of investments, and so there is a lot which is related already to kind of social responsibility, and this is most probably also the reason why universities started to respond to this by showing that they really take a responsibility for a society, not only towards teaching and research. So I would see third mission not as a single mission, as a third one. In the US, many colleagues would most probably respond to this, well, the third mission is the first mission. because they did it, the strategy of the university is rather related to the local community, to the local companies, and so on. So I don't think that this is. Well, we can also discuss about the name, right? Service, engagement, third mission. The third is the right place because, in fact, I don't care. What I care is saying that, okay, we have indicators, we have measures, we have descriptors, we have strategies, and foremost, ministries are asking for that. So they ask to demonstrate this part of activities towards performance agreements, for example, and universities have to respond. And some of the universities take it as more proactive, and others reactive. I'm not sure that this answer, it seems to me this is rather a Sunday speech, the last couple of sentences when it comes to third mission. But I don't think that there is, as we say in Europe, there is no one road leads to Rome. Many roads lead to Rome.
Thank you.
So we have time for at least one more question. One of the things that I wanted to... Oh, right here. Renee, sorry.
I'm wondering about the relationship between the three missions, especially based on the data that you've analyzed, where did you see that universities that would focus more on the third mission would focus less on the first two? And to what extent is the third mission seen as also contributing back to the first two missions, that things you learn in the engagement in the third can contribute back to the first two missions?
We did not really look on that, so in the kind of the influences, so to say. What we could see is that the age matters. So those young universities are more professionalized, not the comprehensive ones. They are much more open-minded to third mission than those huge comprehensive universities with a long tradition. So I think this is about positioning, because those universities might just look for a proper position for their own university, and here the third mission could be a vehicle to move forward.
So just to follow up on that, I'm wondering, do you think that all institutions of higher education should pursue the third mission, or should it be some more than others?
I try to address this at the very end by saying that I see this concept of third mission rather a portfolio, and out of this portfolio of different activities, different possibilities, I think each and every university has to develop a strategy by looking or kind of addressing certain elements of the third mission, not try to answer or cover all these initiatives in the very same time and in the very same, because we have scarce resources and limited possibilities here. A good example is lifelong learning in Austria. So universities had to develop lifelong learning strategies a couple of years ago, because the ministry asked for that. We did this. When it comes to lifelong learning or lifelong learners at universities and how this strategy is implemented at universities, we see a large diversity. Some of the universities really address this issue of continuing education of lifelong learning, establishing centers moving forward. Others, they say, okay, given by the law, what we have to do is we have to offer to our graduates some continuing education programs, but that's all. And this is what they do.
Well, it's on the hour, so maybe we'll end there and thank Attila again for his presentation.